What's going on YouTube? This is Comms Engineering, and today we're going to be downloading and setting up the apps to build this website. So the two main software tools that we're going to be using, or software apps that we're going to be using to build this website, are going to be GitHub and Visual Studio Code. Our GitHub is basically an app that we can put our storage into this one big house. It's basically where we can store our updated code and our updated pages into one database. On the other hand, Visual Studio Code is kind of the factory that we're going to use. It's just it's called an integrated development environment, and that is where we are going to type up our code and run it. So the first step that we got to do is make a GitHub account. I will have a link in the description for the steps on how to make a GitHub account. But as soon as you're done with that, we're going to go ahead and go to GitHub dashboard, and we're going to go to create this new button, which means to create a new repository. Our repository are basically project folders. So we can we can click new. We'll start off with naming our repository. This can be any name you want, honestly. I'm just going to write example website. Description, website for Mosque or Masjid. You can choose to have it publicly available to the internet, so anybody that clicks repository or anybody that searches for it may be viewable on the internet, but private, nobody's going to be able to see it. However, a disclaimer for the future that if you want to run a website on a private repository, you're going to have to get GitHub Pro, which is about $43 per year. But if you want to run it publicly, it is at no cost. So you can add a README file. This is just, as said here, a long description for your project. You don't have to worry about the git ignore and the license. We do not have to worry about that. We can just go ahead and click create repository. And here's the mainframe for our new repository or project. Now, the next thing that you want to take a look at is this green button which says code. Now, the way that we're going to be pulling this from a GitHub into Visual Studio Code will be through, if we click on this and go to this URL right here, we can see that there's a GitHub link. But before dealing with that link, we're going to have to go to make a new folder. We're going to go to our Finder or the File Explorer if you're on Windows. I'm going to be doing this on Mac. You can go to or anywhere, honestly. Just make a new folder and let's call it, this can be a different name or it could be the same name. It doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do the same name for simplicity. And there we go. So this should be empty right now. We're going to be pulling this GitHub link right here and putting all the contents in it, which is, it's just the README right now, but we're going to have more stuff in there. We're going to be pulling and pushing that through this new folder. So the next step is to install the Visual Studio Code app that I previously talked about, which is where we write our code. Once you have that installed, again, I'll have a link to the description. We're going to go ahead and open this. So this is where we're going to be writing our code. Here we have our files, every single folder, every single file, everything will be shown here and displayed. This is the search for, you can search for any word that in your files. If you have a file that should be there but you don't know where it is, you can see what you have here. This is what's going to be linking the GitHub with this app. You don't have to worry about this. This is important. This is going to be our extensions, basically modifications that Visual Studio Code uses. It's an example of what an extension is. Essentially what this is that people that use Visual Studio Code would create these extensions to easier assist with specific things, such as running almost every popular language. For this one by this person, we have other extensions such as the spell checker that can automatically check spelling errors, so on and so forth. Now for this project, you're gonna have to have Git installed. Now what Git is it's basically a pulling and pushing tool that can be used to move your project and code around. As I said before, GitHub can be a storage place for this, and this is the main tool that it uses. Now, since I'm on a Mac, I already have this installed. It says that if you don't have it installed already, it will prompt you to install it once you type in this command into your terminal. Now, your terminal is basically just a built-in control center for your computer. I'm gonna hit Command Space and go to terminal. Should look like this for Mac, and you have to type in CMD in your Windows search bar so it can prompt you the terminal. But for Mac, it's now, I'll type in git version and I've already got version 2.39. So I'll leave a link for this in the description. So now that you've got your GitHub, your Visual Studio Code downloaded, and that you've checked your Git version, now we need to download JavaScript. We have to download something called Node.js. Node.js is an open source cross-platform JavaScript, a runtime environment. Open source means that it's available to the public. Cross-platform means that you can use it on multiple different devices, laptops, desktops, mobile devices even. JavaScript, the runtime environment, and the environment that we're going to be using is basically the IDE that I explained earlier on in the video, the integrated development environment, which is the IDE. It's a text editor, a code editor, basically, with modifications, extensions, libraries, APIs, basically a Visual Studio Code. So we type in Node.js onto the search bar, and it can run on Windows, Linux, and Mac, fortunately. And it includes JavaScript, Python, C, C++, and CoffeeScript, but we're going to be using JavaScript. So you go to Node.js, and let's click the recommended for most users, and it'll pop up here. And just go through this, continue, agree, and you can choose where to install it on your computer. It doesn't really matter which drive it is, as long as you pick somewhere to install it, some folder, make another folder. If you don't know how to do that, you can go back on this video and see how I created the folder. Same thing in Windows, just right click, new folder. So hit install. I've already installed it, so I'll move on to the next step. It's always good to check the version of Node.js that you have, so we can go back to the terminal and do this. So you open your terminal and type in node version, and you can see here that I have the version 16.13. That is probably not the same as the one that you may be downloading right now, because I've downloaded this a while back, but nonetheless, this is what you want to see. Now we can continue on to the Visual Studio Code. Another thing that you want to check after the Node.js is downloaded is NPM, which is the Node Package Manager. This is included with Node.js. We go back to the terminal and type in npm -- version. And this should also be similar. So now we're back here. We want to click code, click copy URL. So now we've copied this URL. Go back to Visual Studio Code. Now we want to open a new terminal. So Visual Studio Code has its own terminal. It's the same. It does the same exact thing as your computer terminal. So we can just open that, or we can open a new terminal in Visual Studio Code. It pops up down here, or we can just go to the normal terminal that your computer has. I'm going to use this, but it really doesn't matter. You can use either one. And what you want to do, type in CD, and you want to type in the one that I created was called example website. So I'm going to type in that example website. And as you can see, we are now inside of the folder. And now the computer is looking at the folder, and it is waiting for our next command to see what it's going to do. So our next command is going to be git clone and command V. Now, what this is going to do is it's going to take everything that's in here, in this folder, which is just the README, and putting it inside of Visual Studio Code, as I stated before. So just press enter. And now you can see it's done. So now we can go here, open the folder, open this. And as you can see, the folder is now presented on Visual Studio Code for us to start actually building the website, which will be continued in the next video.